You're a small rodent, maybe an insect, and stalking you is a member of the reptilian master species. The eyes, the teeth, the jaws are designed to kill prey. The advantages that put this predator at the top of the food chain doesn't have to be speed. For the largest of this species, it's the bite that kills. Don't mistake them for Jurassic dinosaurs. They're alive and well today, surviving with a killer instinct of lizards. Take your choice for a name that will instill fear. A land crocodile or a dragon. Either one works. Up to 2.5 meters or 8 feet long and weighing up to 180 pounds. A menacing flicking tongue tasting the air for any trace of prey. And a mouth so overloaded with bacteria that a bite means almost certain death. The Komodo dragon from the Indonesian island chain has been known to the Western world for just over 70 years. The first rumours about these giant lizards in the early part of the 20th century talked about a land crocodile.
Just think of the name for a moment. A land crocodile. Hey, this reptilian beast that lives in tropical waterways often strikes fear into people's hearts. And you can see why. But at least he lives in murky water that you wouldn't want to swim in. So, if you keep clear of the water, you're safe. But a land crocodile, it might be in faraway Asian places, but just the name would be enough to challenge the strongest heart.
An area of the Indonesian archipelago called the Lesser Sunda is where you'll find the biggest of all the lizard species. It's a peaceful, idyllic place. A group of volcanic islands just to the southeast of the tourist mecca of Bali. This is the only home of the largest of the family of lizards that go under the name of monitors. The land crocodile name quickly disappeared, and Douglas Burdon, the leader of a 1928 American expedition, gave a new name to the world's largest lizard. An equally fearsome title at that, the Komodo dragon. The main islands for the dragons are Komodo, Rinca, Padar, and Western Flores. Rob Bredel found the dragons on Flores Island. It's typical Komodo habitat, open tropical savanna country, thick forests that are concentrated in wide, flat valleys and rocky hills. There have been stories of dragons growing to lengths of more than 5 meters, that's over 16 feet, but there is no real proof that such monsters ever existed. "11 feet is the longest recorded specimen, and that may be enough when you're right next to one. They spend their time patrolling their territories in search of food. They stay on the move through most of the daylight hours. And studies of individual animals have shown that they can range as much as 10 kilometers or over 6 miles in a day. With the Komodo, it's all about size. Big prey plus adaptive evolution made this the only lizard species big enough to be able to take humans as food. The Komodo has a reputation as a man-eater, and when you see what they can do to the carcass of a goat, it's easy to understand that they could quickly dispose of a human body. Witnesses have told of a male dragon weighing around 110 pounds eating an 88-pound pig in 20 minutes. To put that in some kind of perspective, a human weighing around 130 pounds would have to eat more than 300 hamburgers in 20 minutes to come anywhere near the appetite of a Komodo dragon. There have been stories of local villagers being taken. A tourist who fell and injured his knee supposedly taken in 1973 after his guide ran off to get help. And there's the German tourist who went to the beach alone to sunbathe. All that was found of him were his glasses and his camera. Attacking and eating an injured tourist would fit the Komodo's hunting pattern. They are mainly opportunistic carnivores at the top of the food chain in their home environment. Many Komodos have become accustomed to intrusive tourists, but the primitive instinct is not far below the surface.
What makes their bite so dangerous isn't so much the flesh wound. I mean, of course, they can take a large chunk out of you or leave a major hole or a long cut, jagged wound, whatever. What makes them so dangerous is that their favorite food is the stinkiest, oldest meat that they can find. So therefore, they have huge amounts of pathogenic or dangerous, disease-causing bacteria in their mouths. Perfect environment for huge infections, dangerous infections, leading to blood poisoning, which ultimately can lead rather quickly to death.
The flash of speed is often the first sight prey can catch of the Komodo. The prey is rarely taken to the ground in the first attack, and they seemingly make good their escape, only suffering a bite from the serrated teeth of the dragon. But that bite, laden with deadly strains of septic bacteria from the saliva of the dragon, is what makes the Komodo a unique hunter-killer. The constantly flicking tongue of the Komodo is part of the animal's unfailing detection system once it has made an attack. The bacteria in the dragon's saliva acts quickly on the prey after the initial bites. Death is almost certain. Its tooth serrations are a haven for particles of meat from the Komodo's previous meals. This protein-rich residue supports 50 different bacterial strains, of which at least 7 are highly septic. This bacteria-laden saliva has intrigued science since the dragons were discovered. Toxinologist Brian Fry.
Well, where the bacteria is living is in their mouth. So it's an area where there's lots of oxygen and where there's, well, it's being freshly washed because, as you may have seen, they put out copious amounts of saliva. So it's not going to affect the animals so much because it's in their mouth. They've got some antibodies against it themselves. They're living with it. They're constantly washing their mouth out. And it's not sitting on top of a wound. It's on top of their skin layers, their mucous membranes. So it's not actually entering their blood system.
But not all agree, as Australian quarantine officer and owner and breeder of literally hundreds of reptiles, Neil Charles, explains.
The animal itself is exposed to stress of some sort, whether it be lack of food, too high temperature, too cold a temperature, competition from other males, or a male that's frustrated for a female or something like that. When that animal is under stress and its immune system is compromised, quite often those bacteria will build up to a higher than acceptable level and then manifest itself as a disease. And in reptiles, quite commonly, it can be an eye infection, it can be like a mouth canker, it can be skin blisters, catch a cold. There can be a whole range of things that it can manifest it as a disease. But when everything's in balance with the animals, they cope with it quite fine.
But in the wild, survival, it seems, is not an issue after a Komodo bite. For the dragon, it's just a matter of following the smell of decay. The forked tongue is constantly flicked in and out of the mouth, tasting the air. The tongue is drawn across the Jacobson's organ, similar to a snake's, in the roof of the mouth, where airborne particles in millionths of a part can be detected. With the Komodo on the scent of decaying prey, the seemingly random wandering narrows down to a tightly focused hunt. The Komodo also has good daytime eyesight, detecting movement at up to 1,000 feet. Combining these accurate sensory organs, the victim is quickly found. In its natural environment, the diet of the Komodo is varied. Wild pigs and even water buffalo are attacked, and in what is a harsh environment, deer are surprisingly common.
Here on the island of Komodo, the Komodo dragon's main prey item is the Timor deer, an introduced species that grows to about the size of a Great Dane dog. They also prey on the wild pig and the occasional villager's goat. But over there on the island of Rincha, they've been known to take down water buffalo. They're a very formidable predator.
The number of Komodo dragons on the island group is around 5,700, but few seem to have a specific range. There is constant movement depending on the availability of prey.
This is the Australian lace monitor. It's about the nearest thing we've got to a Komodo dragon. In fact, a baby Komodo looks identical to a lace monitor. Now, he's the same as the Komodo. He's got shark-like teeth. They're built for tearing and cutting. When I caught this one, he just got my wrist. Just the tips of his teeth. If it had got me good, I'd have needed stitches. Lucky for me, he didn't. Now, the reason the Komodo grows so big is that a few million years ago, Indonesia was populated by pygmy elephants. And it's obviously the food that's caused the Komodo to grow so big. If the food was that big in Australia, we'd have them that big here. In fact, in prehistoric times, Australia had the largest monitor lizard.
There is a dramatic difference in appearance between the young and mature animals. The adult dragons are a menacing, dirty, drab colour. They have a solid, threatening appearance. In contrast, the young and juvenile dragons have striking, colourful bodies. They have yellow and black stripes along the back. They are long and sinuous with strong claws, a perfect combination that allows them to move with ease from branch to branch in the treetops. It's hard to believe that these incredibly flexible, agile creatures will mature into the ponderous giants of the forest floor. Below, their future prey grazes contentedly. But for the young Komodos, there is ample food on the trees. Their tongue is already in action as they hunt insects of all sizes and raid birds' nests for hatchlings and eggs. Geckos also make their home in trees, but they are no match for the young Komodos. The young Komodos do occasionally venture onto the forest floor. Their colours provide great camouflage among the leaf litter.
Baby giant.
This, along with their speed, gives them some protection against adult predators. But one of these journeys down from the trees gives us a chance to have a close look at one of these striking creatures.
Baby Komodo dragon.
Rob loves to ponder that these harmless babies, given time, will grow to be the fearsome giants of the lizard world. Rob says that he's caught lizards that remind him of this baby Komodo on many occasions. But even with his vast wildlife experience, one thing he likes to remember is, in the wild, you learn new things every day.
Quite inoffensive, really, isn't it? You.
Always on the lookout for animals on the road, Rob stops for what looks like a snake.
It's not a snake. It's a Burton's legless lizard. Now, there are about 30 species of them, and what's truly amazing is they are totally unique to Australia, with 2 species slipping across to New Guinea. Now, even though it's shaped like a snake has the skin of a skink. It actually belongs to the gecko family. Now this is a female and she's pregnant. She's got 2 large eggs in her body. Having large eggs means she's going to have large babies, which gives them a better chance of survival. And it's this particular species is almost all over Australia.
Back at his wildlife park, Rob takes time out with his lace monitors at feeding time. Animals like this dead rabbit and other vermin can provide the lace monitor a plentiful supply of food in the wild.
My foot! Yeah.
They make short work of these introduced and destructive species, and lace monitors do well when these invaders are in plague proportions.
This is a lace monitor, basically a mini Komodo dragon. Now, one of the things I don't get to do a lot of now is actually get in and feed the animals in the zoo. I used to do it a lot when I was younger, and it actually helps you know what they can do if they do bite you. Here, come on. What's this? It helps you learn a bit about them.
There are more than 30 species of giant lizards that go under the name of monitors, and they survive in vastly different environments. Rob found this Salvador monitor leading a very comfortable life around the lakes and ponds of the Bangkok Zoo in Thailand. Its normal habitat is in tropical lowlands and always near water. They grow to more than 6 feet in length and can weigh more than 70 pounds. Monitors live in desert and tropical regions, stretching from the Middle East and Africa right across Asia to Australia. For smaller species, there is no need to think about taking on large prey like rabbits. This Spencer's goanna is found in the Australian outback too, but it works on the basis of many smaller meals.
There's something that does well out here in this dry, old, desolate country. Feeding up on grasshoppers.
And there are plenty of grasshoppers well hidden among the rocks and ground cover. Like all goannas, the Spencer's is harmless as far as humans are concerned, and it certainly plays a positive role in our environment with insect control. Typical of all goannas, the Spencer's uses its tail for defense. Put yourself down at his level. Unless you were bigger than him, that thrashing tail would make you consider some other item of prey. There is enough power in that flicking tail to knock any smaller creature off its feet. Have a close look at this prehistoric throwback. You can see why the early filmmakers used lizards in the first dinosaur movies. But spend some time in the Australian bush, and you'll find that not all monitors are successful hunters.
This looks interesting. Leg bone, backbone, ribs, bit of skin. It's obviously a goanna or monitor lizard. And judging by the size of the bones and the ribs, possibly about 1.5 metres long. And there's another interesting little thing here. Looking at the backbone, he's had a broken back at one stage. And that's where it was broken. Those 2 bits are fused together. They all come apart. Except for that one there. That's how it fits together. You can see it's fused right there. That may have even led to his death. Because when it gets a bit hard out here, it'll find it much harder to find food. See if we can find a piece of his jaw.
Rob finds it interesting to have a look at the bones of the jaw. You can see the size of the teeth, which could obviously do a good job of grabbing prey. They also work very effectively as cutting devices. Goannas can rip off large chunks of meat from prey they catch, and that's what the teeth are used for, to cut and rip, as opposed to chewing. If we have a look at the way a goanna moves and how agile they are in the wild, imagine what the restriction of a broken back would do. Rob can only speculate about how the animal would have received a broken back, but a fight with a larger monitor is a possibility. There can be very violent action when animals up to 5 feet long and weighing more than 60 pounds clash. In the wild, if you are smaller than a goanna, you are prey. And that includes animals that can be deadly in themselves, like scorpions. Just another small, easy meal for these lizards.
But on rare occasions, the prey has the last say. This would have to be one of the most amazing specimens I've ever seen on display in a museum.
They are the mummified remains of a goanna found in the Australian desert. Normally, the porcupine-like echidna and the goanna show each other a considerable amount of respect. But times must have been tough because the monitor tried to eat prey that normally would be out of bounds. The spikes of the echidna proved to be too much, and the hunted and the hunter perished.
Come on, fella. Out you come. That's it, let go. This is a Gould's monitor. And like all monitors, they're a bit like a snake with legs. He's got the same sensitive tongue as a snake, except better than a snake, he's got excellent eyesight, he's got really good hearing, powerful claws, so he can actually dig things out of the ground, or in other cases climb trees. Now this fellow is a ground dweller. You can see that by the feet. His claws are very long and slender, designed like little shovels for digging. He's a real top predator, this fellow.
Size almost always wins the battle in the wild. This is a Gould's monitor, about 1.5 metres or about 5 feet long, and an important part of its diet are the rodents that thrive in good seasons in Australia. An abundance of rats and mice means good hunting for the Gould's monitor. A quick strike disables the rodent, and the monitor then swallows it whole. Rat and mice plagues occur regularly in Australia, providing a ready source of food for the monitors.
This is a lace monitor, and he's not a real big one. He's almost identical to a Gould's monitor, except he's arboreal. He lives up trees, and his claws are quite different. They're more hooked for climbing, and he eats a lot more birds and eggs because of that. He's got excellent hearing, so if he hears baby birds, he can pick them up by that. He's also got that fantastic tongue like the snake. So very few things would escape him. There you go, mate. Oops, that one. You cracked that one, didn't you? That old lace monitor I told you about that climbs trees and likes to eat birds and eggs. If you got one as a pet, nothing like feeding them what they like best. And you'll notice that when he eats it, he'll eat them whole, so he doesn't waste any. And he reckons a dozen eggs for breakfast is really good.
This Parenti monitor makes its home in the dry parts of Australia, country that is also home to the brown snake, one of the world's most deadly reptiles. The brown snake is an extremely efficient predator in its own right, but it's no match for the swift Parenti. On most occasions, disappearing down a burrow would mean safety, but the Parenti is a determined hunter. With its tongue flicking to pick up minute scent particles from the snake, the monitor quickly tracks down its prey. The Parenti's claws are perfectly designed for digging, and it quickly opens up the narrow entrance to the burrow. The Parenti knows the snake isn't far away as it sniffs the soil. The venomous brown snake may survive the first strike, but the Parenti doesn't give up, diving into the burrow. The brown snake is a fighter too, striking at the Parenti with fangs that can deliver a deadly dose of venom in seconds. But there is no place on the thick, scaly skin to score a killer blow. The Parenti is the easy winner in this lethal battle.
Yay! Got him! Gotcha.
Rob is now looking, make that feeling for, something a little bit slower.
Yeah, nice little fella. Beauty. This sleek-looking lizard is Australia's largest skink. It's called a land mullet. Now, the reason they call it a land mullet, pretty slippery little devil, and the scales on his back look exactly like those you find on the fish called a mullet. He's omnivorous, eats just about anything he can come across, insects as well as plant matter. Not a real fast lizard. Looking at the length of his legs, you can see. Faster than a blue tongue, though. Long, slender tail. It is a drop-tail lizard too. It's actually the same sort of lizard you find on your fence, that little fence lizard. It is just the world's largest skink. He'd like to have a bit of me too, by the looks. He's not too happy about being caught. You see, get around about 2 feet long, 60 centimetres. Off you go, off you go, on.
But the land mullet doesn't get very far.
They wear out quick. Good for a very short distance. Most people call this a fast lizard. I mean, the little legs go quickly, but it's only for a short distance. I can easily catch them on the flat.
A slower lizard species that's an adored pet in the outback of Australia is the shingleback or bog-eye. His tail is the same shape as his head, a good defence for wary predators.
All reptiles shed their skins, and just like us, I think it annoys them a bit. Like when we have a sunburn, we like to peel the skin off.
One of his favourite foods is the garden snail. This shingleback has found a prey item that's actually slower than he is. From From a slowpoke to a speedmeister, the always entertaining frillneck lizard, or frilly, shows us why he's the show-off of the species.
With this little fellow, if camouflage doesn't work and running doesn't work, he makes himself bigger than he really is. This little fellow bars up, makes himself bigger than he really is. Ah! And then attacks and runs.
Like the majority of the world's more than 3,000 lizard species, the frillneck's main diet is made up of insects. Rob plays with his reptiles with all the fun and wonder of a kid on Christmas morning.
They climb up the trees, get as high as they can, and they'll eat anything that lives on the tree as well, any sort of insect, but it gives them a good vantage point to see around. Now they're pretty quick as far as lizards go, but they've got short legs, so they're not very fast compared to human. From a vantage point like this, he just surveys the area, and if a grasshopper was to jump down the ground, somebody sees that. Excellent eyesight, I might add, very good eyesight, especially for things that are moving. They go down there and pounce. Gotcha.
The frillneck's home is the Australian bush. But it takes more than speed to get away from Rob and his mate John Robbo Robinson.
Well, I suppose you want me to go up and get him, don't you?
That's right, mate. First bit of bush tucker we've seen here today, so... And you're younger than me.
Okay, you make sure you catch him if I drop him.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah, mate. I'm not going to catch you, though.
Robbo's a big guy, but he's agile and determined, no matter how thin the branches get.
Got him! What a beauty! Oh. Get his name back. Look at that, eh?
Well, he's a good size, eh?
Speed and a high energy level distinguish the frillneck. But not all lizards rely on very fast movements to catch prey. The killer instinct develops in different ways with different lizard species.
Here we've got a blue-tongued lizard. Now, unlike the frillneck, he can't run. He's got real short, tiny legs. He's built real low to the ground. In fact, that caused a problem because many people here thought it was a snake. And there are stories that if they bite you, the sore never heals. But that's not true. One of his most prominent features, where he got his name from, is the bright blue tongue, which he keeps poking out. That's just to find food.
Rob's fossicking for lizards, but often comes up with a fascinating array of creatures great and small. He can find gold in a disused farmhouse, or even in a pile of old junk.
Nothing in there. Now this is a really good spot here because the sheets of tin are on top of each other. There's a little lizard going in there too. Just look here, the numbers of eggs under here that have been hatched. Look at them. There's just heaps and heaps of eggshells here from where the geckos have all hatched. They must love this spot. And there's a heap of good eggs over here. Big centipede over here, look at this. Quite a big centipede. The big ones are usually females. He's trying to bury away again. Now most animals, if you don't try and pin them down or something, just think you're part of the woodwork, so you can pick up most animals like this. Don't seem to worry too much. Off you go. That's the mummy. Oh, now this is an adult bio-nose gecko. Now if it was like other geckos, a male would have two large protuberances under the tail where the genitals are kept. I don't know if you can see it, but through her skin on her belly you can actually see a white shape. That's an egg inside of her stomach. It's not that well developed, so it's harder to see. But just in front of the fingers you can see a pale white thing. That's an egg right there. Here's another 3 of those geckos, and they're all females. And in one of them you can really see the eggs really well. She's got 2 in the stomach.
Then, night falls. And like shift workers, the next gang of predators are on the job.
When you talk about lizards, you got to love them. Australia's got 600 species, and some of them are nocturnal. In fact, all of the geckos are. And I'm out here tonight to try and find you one of the largest and most unusual geckos. The first thing I've got to do to find one of these geckos is find the right tree. They're like the fig trees. Ha! You beauty. There he is. What a little beauty. I've been out here for 3 hours, but it's been worth it. Here it is, the leaf-tailed gecko. Now the reason he lives on these trees, I think, is because insects come to the fruit. Makes it more easy for him to find food. Now what's unusual about this gecko, not only does he look weird, most of Australia's tree climbing geckos have padded feet, suction cups. He's got claws. Normally if I found a gecko with claws I'd say he'd be a ground dweller. Suction cups, lives in the trees. This is just an unusual one. Now this gecko does rely on camouflage during the day to hide himself. The tail looks a bit like a leaf, helps, but not only that, that tail is food storage. The bigger the tail, the longer he can go without food.
Traditional Aboriginal communities still hunt what they call bush tucker. They lived off the land for countless millennia, and now they can quickly produce a meal from an animal such as a parenti. Tradition means that the women prepare the giant lizard for cooking. It's first quickly seared on an open fire, and then buried in coals to bake. A big lizard like this parenti provides enough food for this extended family group. The test comes in the tasting.
Tell you what, it tastes a bit like crayfish.
We found our next fascinating lizard in a totally opposite environment from the desert. Rob's on the hunt for the eastern water dragon. Rob spotted one in a local river and has set out after it. After a couple of tries, he comes up with what he was looking for, a well-adapted lizard who could have been a stand-in for Godzilla.
You think he's dead? He's not. Many reptiles play dead when they're captured. It's a part of the survival and killer instinct. Bright red belly. Now this is an eastern water dragon. It is the second largest lizard, or heaviest, I should say, dragon lizard in Australia. Now this lizard is a tree dweller. We can tell that by his claws. Very sharp and hooked claws. Climbs a lot of trees. To escape danger, he'll drop into the water, sit on the bottom until the danger goes. Now he's also mostly herbivore. We can tell that from his teeth. If we look at his teeth, you'll notice they're very serrated. All the same size, chomping. But he does eat insects, shrimps, little fish if he can catch them, and other little lizards. If you look at those nice crests on his back, you can see where the word dragon comes from. Looks like a true dragon, doesn't it? Very long back legs means he's a very fast lizard. If I put it up there, it comes up to his eye. Means he's a good runner as well. Very strong legs as well. Flat, sort of paddle-like tail in a way for excellent swimming. So he's adapted for the trees, the land, and the water, and has the added play dead. If everything else fails, play dead. They might leave you alone.
If there's a creature on Earth that screams danger just by its appearance, it would be hard to go past the Komodo dragon. Its lumbering bulk, flicking tongue and dark, menacing colouring give a message that this is an animal to stay clear of. It can consume prey almost matching its own body weight in an incredibly short time. Then there's its saliva, alive with septic bacteria.
But a human that's bitten may not have even ever encountered that bacteria, so they wouldn't have any circulating antibodies, let alone a high enough level of antibody to be able to fight the bacteria. Plus, on top of that, you've got a nasty wound, a very dirty wound to begin with, and, like I said, you've got puncture wounds, which, when you have a wound that closes up and you have the bacteria down there below, that's when you get the very dangerous infections, the type that can become lethal very quickly, because that's when the really, really bad bacteria grow. The ones that don't grow in the presence of oxygen are the ones that are more likely to kill you than the ones that grow in the presence of oxygen. So that's why with a Komodo dragon bite, they actually can't stitch it. They have to leave it open to let air get to it, let it drain, let it fester a bit, but to keep it open and keep it flowing, the worst thing you can do with any animal bite, but a monitor lizard bite in particular, is stitch it up.
The Komodo dragon and other members of the monitor family are the biggest of all the lizards. They are a muscle-bound combination of claws, sharp teeth, and powerful jaws with a thrashing tail. Well-constructed killing machines. In their own environment, they are at the top of the food chain. But if we stay clear of them, we're in no danger. But don't get between a lace monitor and its meal. Get in the way of a Komodo, and the consequences could even be worse, particularly if you're injured and unable to get clear. What drives the dragons is what drives millions of creatures on our planet, an instinct to survive. So whether it comes across a prey animal stopped in its tracks by a deadly bacteria from a Komodo bite, or an incapacitated human, it gets on with surviving. Lizards exist around us. They play their part in controlling vermin and mostly share our world without our knowledge.
There are more than 3,000 species of lizards, and for most of it, it's a daily battle that pitches the instinct that would keep them alive against a competing instinct that would see them as food. I'm Rob Brettle. Thanks for joining us on Killer Instinct.